Hi everyone, just a quick reminder that if you want to follow along the journey of making this dress in real time with me, both on Instagram and YouTube, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. You get to choose how much to pledge per month, and you will receive live updates both on my close friends' Instagram stories and access to all of the YouTube videos right now. Hope you enjoy the video. Now, I've been very lazy in filming, and I basically didn't film anything. I know I didn't actually film anything this morning, but I've spent about 2.5 hours working on cutting out pieces for the ruffles, for the train ruffle, and then also sewing them together and ironing them to get rid of the raw edges. So these two here I've done already, as in I've already sewn pieces together. So it's all folded up, but I'll just find a place where I've sewn some pieces together. So here you can see some piecing that I did. So it's just sewn, and then the seam allowances have been top stitched down on either side to keep that flat. And that's just an example of how I've extended the pieces. This particular one, I had enough fabric to cut it on the fold and then just use the fold of the fabric to make it this width. And then what I've done is ironed all of the raw edges under, and then those are just being held with clips. And what I'm going to do is run a stitch all along that edge to get rid of the raw edges. This one over here, I did not have enough fabric to cut on the fold, so you'll see that on the edge here, this has actually been sewn together, and then after I sewed those edges together, I pressed open the seam allowance and then pressed it over to make sure that it was nice and crisp and very close to the actual seam. And then the same sort of thing with the other side. I've just folded those edges under, ironed them down, and held them in place with clips until I go to the sewing machine to iron down all of those edges. So now the reason why I'm making all of my ruffles like a double layer is because, one, it will make it easier when trying to get rid of these raw edges, because I can just literally fold under the raw edges and then sew that down. So that's one reason. And then the other reason is that I really want these ruffles to have a bit more body to them. So having double layer of ruffles will help with that. And what I'm thinking is that for this particular one, the one with stitching along the top edge, I'm going to run my gathering stitches up along this edge, and then this edge here, which has the two edges top stitched together, this will be the free edge of the ruffle. Same goes with this bigger piece down here. The folded edge will be used as the where the gathering stitches will go, and then these ones, when this is all sewn down, this will be the free edge of the ruffle. So that's the leftover fabric I had from a bed sheet, a bed doona cover. So that's all I have of this. So now I'm moving on to doing the same process with this cotton broadcloth, which is the very last of the cotton broadcloth that I have left. So that's all I've got there. I will have to end up making all of the other ruffles out of that fabric over there, which is the poplin. The poplin is a lot thinner and flimsier than the cotton broadcloth, but it's just going to have to do. The other thing that I'm worried about with the poly poplin is that the iron will melt the fabric, because when I was ironing down these edges, I literally would just leave the iron on the fabric as I was folding like the fabric to move, and then move the iron over the next piece of fabric and things like that. So we'll see how I go. But yeah, here is the cotton broadcloth, the leftovers that I have. You can see here that I've pieced together some of the pieces to make them longer, and then I've stitched all along this one edge. And then what I'm going to do is take this over to the ironing board, and this is the exact process I did for those pieces over there. And I'll be a bit more diligent in filming, but I'm going to press open these seam allowances, press it once again, so I can have the nice clean finished edge, and then I'm going to fold down these raw edges in on themselves and then clip them in place. So then this one will be all prepared for sewing. Yeah, so that's what I'm up to today. It is taking a very long time, and considering how large the base of the train ruffle is, this is going to take forever. And I'm actually glad that I did end up shortening the train, because I can't imagine doing this train ruffle for a larger train. It's a really big train already as it is. So yeah, there's the skirt over there. So basically all of this is going to be covered with ruffles, and I'm thinking that this whole area will be covered with the poplin fabric with ruffles, and then up here this will be these wider, more durable cotton pieces, and that will help to help hold the hem out, I guess. So that's my thinking there. Oh, and also if you're curious, these pieces have been cut to about 5.5 inches wide, because I'm aiming for around 5-inch wide ruffles. This one here is a bit smaller because that's all I had. That one's about a 4-inch ruffle, but I'm thinking 4 to 5 inches should be good. I don't want to go any smaller than that, because otherwise it would take forever to cover this service area. And I don't want to go any bigger than that, because I feel like 6 inches is just a bit big for a ruffle. And then as for how much, how long each of my ruffle pieces need to be, I'm thinking that I'll probably just do double the width, this section. I'll double whatever that is and then gather it up. But I have heard of people using triple the length, and that will form like a lot of volume in the ruffles. But we'll see how I go. But I'm thinking for the moment just double this length, because it's already massive as it is. I can't imagine trying to triple this length, and cutting out all of those pieces and ironing and sewing them. It's just a lot. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to get this train ruffle done today. I thought that it would be a lot easier, but I just I didn't anticipate how much work would be involved in making ruffles. Anyway, I'm going to have a break for lunch, and then I will get back to it. Okay, so I thought I would actually explain what I did to those other pieces. So what I did was I folded it out like this, and then along the narrow seam allowance, so this has already been trimmed, so the seam allowance is just a couple of millimeters either side. I basically just go over the seam allowance and press it open flat, and this will help when I turn the right sides facing outwards and basically encase this seam allowance, and it makes sure that the edge is as smooth and as crisp as it can be. Otherwise you just have a really difficult time trying to get a really nice edge. So I'll just show you with this section, but this is a very long piece. As you can see, it just continues on and on and on. With these joined parts, I would just press them flat open as well. But essentially, I'm just going to demonstrate with this section here. But you can see that the seam allowance has now been ironed out flat. Then I would bring over the material like this, and then I would press down on that seam, and you can see that it's much easier to get that edge nice and crisp. So then I would just go along again with the iron and press along that edge and make sure that the seam is along the very edge. So that will give me a nice clean edge to work with, and this is the edge that I'm going to be gathering along. So that's that. And then as for the two raw edges at the bottom here, I will simply fold maybe like 1 centimetre inwards on both of them, like that. And then I would just go along with the iron again to iron those edges under. And that's basically it. And I just did that for the whole length of these pieces. So as you can tell, it takes a very long time. And when I was doing this section here, I would just leave the iron on the fabric like that, and then I would just press with my fingers where I wanted the next section to be ironed, and then I would like move the iron on over to that section. So this is just cotton, so it's not going to burn the fabric or anything, but I'm just worried as to how I'm going to go with the poplin fabric, because this is the last of the cotton that I've got, and yeah, I'm definitely going to have to use the poplin fabric for the rest of the ruffles. There's going to be a lot of ruffles. Anyway, yeah, so that's what I do for this piece here, and then I would grab some clips and I would just use the clips to hold down that folded and pressed edge, and then that will just keep it in place for when I need to bring it to the sewing machine and then top stitch along that line. And like I said before, this edge here will be where the free edge of the ruffle is, and then this edge up the top will be where it's gathered. Yeah, and then as for like the raw edges on the end, depending on if I need to like extend these pieces to extend them, I might just attach extra material. Otherwise, if this is literally the edge of the ruffle, I will just fold under those raw edges and then iron them down like I did just then. Actually, I will go ahead and iron this edge down. May as well. And there we go. So, whoops, I almost lost you. There we go. So that is essentially what I've been doing, and I will need to repeat that same process for a lot more fabric. So yeah, I'm going to continue doing this, and then perhaps when I get up to the poplin fabric, I might record some more. I would like to just get these cotton pieces sewn and then gathered, and then see how that looks on the train ruffle base, and if I'm happy with it, like with this width of ruffle, then I will continue on with the poplin fabric. So I finished ironing all of the edges on the cotton broadcloth, so I've got all of this here, and now I'm going to run this edge under the sewing machine, so just top stitching those two layers together so the raw edges are hidden, and then I think I might start gathering along this top edge. So I'll just use a long basting stitch on my sewing machine. I usually just set the thread length to 5, which is the maximum, and then I set the tension to 0, I think, and then that usually is enough to start gathering the fabric. And I might gather the fabric in small sections rather than the whole length, just because it will be easier to gather that way, rather than have the thread break and then not be able to actually gather the whole length of this fabric. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm probably just going to time-lapse all of that because that's not very interesting to talk through. It's pretty self-explanatory, and I'm going to do the same to those pieces down there. And then I will see if I can, if that's enough for the top tier of the base. I just have to try it and see. So I've finished sewing the raw edges together, and here are my current ruffle pieces, and I've just laid them across the top of my train ruffle to see how much fabric I've actually got and whether or not I can ruffle it and it will fit here. Basically, I've come to the conclusion that both this piece and this piece are too short. The white cotton only reaches from that point to that point. It's not like double the length or anything, so if I ruffled it up, it would only cover like half of the train. So I think I'll leave that one for now, and I won't deal with it. Same goes with this shorter, the shorter patterned piece, but this one here, I don't know if you can tell, but it's actually on the fold. So I've actually got double the length of this here. So this is the piece that I am going to gather up, and you can see that I've started doing it. I started doing some gathering stitches just to see if that would gather up okay. That is on the folded edge up there. So I think I'm just going to start gathering this piece, and as for these other two pieces, I'll probably just put them aside until I figure out what to do with them, since they're not long enough for what I need them for. But yeah, I'm thinking this will form the main ruffle across the top, and then every other ruffle will just have to be cut out of the cheap polypoplin fabric, which is a lot flimsier than this cotton. This cotton is actually a really nice weight, and this cotton broadcloth is a lot stiffer than this one. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, the poplin is like so much thinner than this, so I'm not sure how it will go for ruffles. But considering how cheap the poplin is, and that, you know, the fabric is going to be dragging on the ground, I shouldn't be too concerned with the fabric that I'm using for it. So I'm going to gather this whole top edge and then bring it back to here and see where we're at. So I've just finished putting in my gathering threads along the folded edge. You would have seen in the time lapse that I would stop every now and again to cut the threads, and then that way I'm able to gather the fabric in small sections rather than along the whole length, which I would probably break a thread and then I'm screwed. So I'm hoping that by doing it in smaller sections I won't run into that problem. My machine was being funny and was like, these are the stitches I'm getting. Maybe it's because the thread tension is so low. It is set to 0 basically, and then the length is a 5. But like, I don't know. We'll see how I go. I'm just going to sit here and start gathering the fabric, and then I'll bring it to the train ruffle and then adjust it so it actually fits that length. yeah, I'm hoping this works out because I've only got one length of material here as a ruffle, and if this doesn't work out, then today was a waste and I am stuck. So I'm hoping that this works out, and if it works out, then I can just repeat the same process for the poplin fabric. So I've just pulled on all of the gathering threads to gather this up a bit more. It's looking like it's not going to need to be this gathered to fit the train ruffle base, but that's all right, I can let out these ruffles. What I was doing was I was tying each of these threads into a knot before I started pulling on them, just to make sure I didn't have any threads that came undone and then like I would lose my gathering stitching essentially. So yeah, that's what I'm currently working with, and now I'm just going to lay this on top of the ruffle base and see how it's starting to shape up and how it will fit in with the base. So I've just laid the ruffle out on top of the base, and I found that it's not very gathered now that I've had to like ungather some parts to make it fit. So, and also I'm thinking that this ruffle is actually a bit big, as in wide, for what I'm after. I mean, I'm probably still going to use it, but I don't want to attach it to the base just yet because I figure it will be easier to start sewing the ones down here first. So like if you imagine like me sewing around here, like the ruffles, and all of this doesn't have any ruffles, as I progress, I will have room, like this will all be shoved up against the sewing machine, and if I start from this side, then it would just be too hard to fit under the sewing machine. I'm hoping that makes sense, but like I just want to make it easy for me to sew all of the ruffles on the sewing machine, so that's why I want to start down here and then work my way to the right. I'm thinking that the polypoplin ruffles will need to be a tad shorter in width. So instead of 5 inches, I think that one is, maybe like aiming for about 4 inches. And the other thing I'm thinking of doing is cutting the strips so they are 3 times the length of what they need to be rather than double. So that pink patterned piece there is actually double that length, and that's how much gathering it requires to fit. And I just don't think it's enough gathering to provide the support I want, especially down here on the train. So that's why I'm thinking of doing triple the length with the polypoplin fabric, because it is a lot more flimsy than that cotton. I'm not going to do it tonight. It's evening now and it's dinner time, and I've had enough of this, so I'm going to worry about it tomorrow. But I think I'm going to leave it here, and I'm going to pop that ruffle away, and I will focus on the poplin fabric tomorrow and hopefully get all of those ruffles. Well, not all of them, but we'll see how far I get. But I think I'm making headway, just a lot slower than what I was anticipating. I've looked at a few dust ruffle tutorials online, and they just didn't seem like it would take this long, but it's taking me forever. Yeah. On the plus side, I ordered my buttons, so I'm going to button this onto the train of the skirt. So I ordered my buttons and they should be arriving in like a week. I bought them from an Australian seller, so they shouldn't take too long to arrive. I'd rather buy buttons online on eBay rather than from Spotlight, because I feel like Spotlight charges a fortune for buttons. At least that's what my auntie tells me. So yeah, I've ordered my buttons. They are like tiny 12mm wide buttons, and I ordered 50 of them. And I think I spent like $10 for 50 buttons, which I think is a good deal. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. I'll worry about this tomorrow.